Ah, a gardenia. It looks like a low-fault gardenia tree, and this is a pleasant surprise. So it's a young male and a female. The male's on the left and the female's... Oh, no ways, look at the baby! How cute! Apologies, it's actually two females and a baby. And this is certainly the smallest baby giraffe that I think I've been able to share with any of you on Safari Live. What a pleasant surprise this is. I'm just going to creep forward a little bit. Oh, that is too cute. If we look closely at this young calf, you can actually see its umbilical cord is still showing. It's hardened, but it's newly born, possibly under a month of age, and we will not be rushing away from this. So if you cannot see that little umbilical cord sticking out of its stomach, we will hopefully get some closer visuals, but that gives us a great idea of how young it is. It will snap off eventually, but this is a very, very young giraffe, and like I said, certainly the youngest that I've ever been able to share with any of you. And it looks like Mommy's going to greet it, and maybe we'll get to see it drinking. Look at this. What a beautiful scene this is. And I'm sure it's not going to be long before this little giraffe tries and takes a drink from its mother. There you can see the umbilical cord a bit more clearly as it walks. And they tend to harden at around after 2 weeks of birth. Anywhere from a week to 2 weeks they'll begin to harden. And thereafter you can imagine moving through the vegetation that they do. It wouldn't be long before it gets broken off. Just going to creep forward ever so slightly again. Well, I think we're in luck. I think it's going to come and investigate the vehicle. Already snacking. You can see a lot of herbivores from a young age will supplement their diets of mainly milk with leaves. And I don't know the finer details of newborn giraffe, but I'm fairly certain that the fact that we see it nibbling now will help provide us with some useful intelligence as to how old it may be. Well, maybe the initial one wasn't its mother, and this younger female looks to be possibly the mother, because the calf did attempt to try and nurse there, it looked like. And it looks like she's just coming to make sure that we pose no threat. Aren't they such beautiful animals? Look at how short that little tuft of black hair on the youngster's tail is. That's so cute. And you'll notice a little bit later, once we do show you the adults, you can have a much closer look at their tail, and you'll see that it's got a lot more growing to be done. Now, earlier I said it could be anywhere from 2 weeks to a month in age, and I'm just going to stick with that kind of a rough figure that I've guessed. The fact that we can see a hardened umbilical cord sticking out from its stomach will contribute to that little guesstimate, and the fact that we can see it actively browsing on leaves will make me lean more towards possibly a month mark as opposed to 2 weeks. But it's very difficult to gauge animals, and unless you see them actually get born and follow them thereafter, I'm not confident in trying to tell people that I accurately know their age. Well, we're just going to have a little moments of silence. There's a fork-tailed drongo calling, and it's just such a beautiful scene that I think we should just take a moment to listen and watch. So enjoy. And I'm told you could even hear the giraffe feeding. Faintly, but it was there. We are quite close to them, so I don't want to reposition the vehicle, and even though we can't see that cute little youngster very well at the moment, we just need to be patient. And I'm wondering when this tree is going to start pumping out bitter tannins, which trees will do when under attack from any of the herbivores, making the tree distasteful and thus causing often animals to move off before completely demolishing one whole tree. They have been here since we arrived, so either this tree's security systems are not in place, but technically these giraffes should be moving off fairly shortly. A lot of you must be wondering a bit more about this young giraffe, and Bree is one of those people, and she would like to know how much longer would it take before it reaches its full height. and probably around 2 to 3 years until they will be at their full size, closer to 3 years. And also, how long will they live for? Anywhere from 15 to 20 years will be the average longevity of a giraffe. So it's still got some of a way to go, and you could understand that it's not going to be a very quick process for this tiny giraffe to almost triple in height. Look at how big and knobbly those knees are that it's going to grow into. Incredible. Gilly in Milwaukee, good to have you with us. And Gilly in Milwaukee would like to know, how many different types of giraffe do you get? Well, in South Africa we only get one. This is the southern giraffe. But in other parts of Africa you get different species. Up in East Africa I was fortunate enough to see a few different species: the Rothschild's giraffe, the reticulated giraffe. You also get the Maasai giraffe, as well as the Nubian and West African. There's all in all about 9 different subspecies of giraffe. And I've just got my book out that we can show you a little bit later. My favorite giraffe is personally the reticulated giraffe, which has got very, very clearly defined patches, and they don't fade into one as well. And it's actually worth having a quick look at now. So the reticulated giraffe is on the top left, and you'll notice how the brown blotches and white stripes are very, very defined. Whereas the Maasai or Kenyan giraffe, which you also get in East Africa, you can see already a stark contrast. So the Maasai or Kenyan is fairly similar, VM pages down, to the southern giraffe, which we have here, but still a noted difference. And then the Rothschild's giraffe, which are very rare, and there's not many of them left. They've got very white lower halves to their legs, whereas most other giraffe will have quite brown lower parts to their legs, as you can see. And if you ever do go to Kenya, or you may have heard of the Giraffe Manor, a hotel in Nairobi, where while you're having breakfast in the morning, you can have giraffe putting their heads in the window trying to steal your food off the breakfast plates. And I've been there. It's an incredible experience, and it's at the Giraffe Manor where they are trying to keep a healthy population of the Rothschild's giraffe. Just going to reposition. Well, this is a really wonderful sighting. And big thank you to Jennifer for pointing out that she's noticed some scars on the rump of one of these adult females, and she's interested to know what it could have been caused by. Let me take a closer look, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was in fact lion that have tried to jump onto the rump of the giraffe and then been unceremoniously kicked off. No ways, this is awesome. This young giraffe appears to be playing with the fork-tailed drongo. It's also looking at some holes within that little termite mound that it's standing on. Very curious, and it's got a lot to learn, this youngster. I'm not sure if it's potentially eating some soil there. It looks like it could be. And that may have been why it bent down on that little sandy patch earlier. It's certainly chewing on something. Let's take a closer look here. Yep, it's having some sand for breakfast. Now why it's doing that I'm not entirely sure. A lot of you may be interested as to why it's not staying very close to its mother, and we can't even be certain which one its mother is at this stage. And it is a fairly interesting trait that giraffe have. You can often see young giraffe quite far from their mothers. I guess it's their tall height that allows them a good vantage point to allow their youngsters to move a little bit further off than normal. It's not uncommon to see very young giraffe quite far from their mothers. Aren't we lucky that they are so relaxed with us? That's a good example of how and why we are so fortunate with habituated animals in the Sabi Sands. Once you've habituated the initial population, all of their offspring will begin to act in that same way. This youngster knows no better, but it does know that its mother's relaxed, so it therefore will be relaxed. Now, I've just done a little bit of reading up here, and interestingly, this little calf will be born at around 100 kilograms, about 200 pounds, after a gestation period of 450 days. So, about 15 months, 15-month gestation period. And that's why animals like giraffe and elephants and animals that do have very long gestation periods may give birth at kind of abnormal times relative to other herbivores. Being born in the middle of winter is, I guess, not the ideal time, because this young calf will not have as rich and nutritious milk as it would have if its mother had have given birth in the summer months when there's a lot more food around. So it is a not ideal time of year to be born, but this calf certainly does look healthy. But it is interesting how the animals that do have these extra long gestation periods can't plan to give birth at the beginning of the rainy seasons, like the impala and kudu and a lot of the other herbivores out here. Now, I hope the pack of wild dog that killed impala on this airstrip don't come running through here, because I think they would certainly think about taking down this young giraffe, as would a male leopard, and most certainly a pride of lion. And as much as we don't want that to happen, it is a reality that we do have to think about. Now, this youngster doesn't appear to be using its tongue too much to nibble off the leaves of this acacia tree, but sometimes they will use their tongue, and the adults, I've seen them stick their tongue about 6 inches out their mouth. I guess meaning they could be maybe 12 inches in length in total. I've heard some other stats that to me don't really make sense, because I very seldom see a giraffe stick its tongue further than 6 inches out of its mouth. But I guess the length of the tongue will start far and back in the mouth. But the part that I guess is interesting to us would be that kind of 6-inch extension that they can protrude out their mouth and help wrap around leaves and branches to pluck off tasty bits. I guess just like elephants getting used to their long trunks, giraffe will also take some time to get used to feeding with that long tongue, and also avoiding being pricked by sharp thorns on a lot of the trees that they feed on. It's not a guaranteed rule, and the tree that they were feeding on earlier, a gardenia, had big green leaves and no thorns, and it looked like they were really enjoying it. But typically the tastier trees that are attacked more by animals, by herbivores, are the ones that have the defense of thorns and also very small leaves. And it's a good example of the contrast of trees that they fed on this morning, from the gardenia, big green leaves and no thorns, to this acacia with tiny little leaves and long white thorns. And it's a combination of the giraffe wanting to acquire a mixed diet that will cause them to move from tree to tree, but also what I touched on earlier, trees will understand that they are being attacked, and they will start sending bitter tannins throughout the plant, causing it to be distasteful to whatever's attacking it. And that's why animals will often only feed on a plant for a short while before moving off. But they are generally silent, so all their communication will be from visual cues, and a lot of posturing, I guess, will be done. The way they carry their bodies and display themselves will be how they speak with one another, as well as pheromones. So sight and smell will be their main form of communication. as we never hear any noises coming from them. Well, I'm very happy to hear that Brenda's watching this morning, because I haven't even thought about trying to establish whether this young calf is a male or female yet, and Brenda would like to know if I have. So, Brenda, as I speak to you, I'm looking through my binoculars, but all I can see is a little umbilical twig sticking out between its legs, and cannot be certain whether it is a boy or a girl. The fact that I even got confused with the two adult females when we arrived is a little bit disconcerting. But in my defense, the one female does have abnormally large ossicones. But we will keep a closer look, and as this young calf changes angles, we will hopefully try and work out whether it's a male or a female. Well, there's not only one Brenda watching, we've got another Brenda in Pennsylvania, and I may have misworded what I said to you, and I think Brenda's suggested that they will co-parent this young calf, and it's not likely that they will. It's probably just that there's two females that hang around together, possibly a mother and a daughter from a future or from a previous generation, that are hanging around together, and it'll only be the mother of this calf that will nurse it, Brenda. They won't share that role. I guess there's a slight chance, if two females did give birth at the same time and therefore they would both be lactating, there would be a very small chance that they would share nursing duties, but it's not typical of giraffe, and the fact that only one of them has a youngster will mean only one of them is in fact lactating. We're still not sure which one it could be. The one giraffe has moved off quite some distance from where we are. But again, like I said, it's not uncommon for giraffe mothers to move quite far from their young. And that's what's making it difficult. Oh. We were chatting about the tongue and the length of the tongue of a giraffe earlier, and this youngster's just started licking its lips, which would be great if it continued to do that. And Mark would like to know, what color is the tongue? It's usually a bluish grey color. And let's take a closer look and see if it's any different when they are very young. Just going to be getting my camera out. This is too good of an opportunity not to fire off a few shots, and I suggest you do the same thing. I'm sure a lot of you have been taking screenshots, but if any of you don't know how to, I would suggest Googling however to take a screenshot on whatever device you're watching on, because it is a great way to keep track of what we see on safari. And this is really just such a cute little giraffe. After a while it started backfiring, but it wasn't at a bad time because we did need to reposition. And I'm just going to stop here quickly, Liam, if you can try and... Oh, the little giraffe was running around playfully there, bucking and bronking, and let's see if it does it again. Come on. I'm guessing it might. Be ready with those screenshots. It was running around very playfully earlier. Now that we're on the smooth road, we're just going to creep forward a little bit, but we should be able to keep you fairly close on it because it's nice and smooth. Well, you may have got a little glimpse of that at the end. And it certainly is in a playful mood. Wings alarm calling, and one of the adult giraffe is looking intently in that direction. I wonder if anything of interest to us. They can be such great animals, giraffes, for helping to detect predators like leopard, and if they see leopard they'll often actually walk up towards them because they know the leopard is not a threat. I don't think there's anything to worry about just yet. But at this age it's difficult for me to tell. Well, sadly, this is the boundary of Arethusa, and we will be able to just enjoy some last views of them as they cross south into a neighboring property. But hasn't it been just such a wonderful morning with these giraffe? After what had been very, very quiet and uneventful drive for VM and myself, it certainly has dramatically changed our luck. And I think it is One of the smallest giraffe we've managed to share with you over the last few months. I think we may see it do one more playful run back to its parents. Or am I wrong? Is it going to go for it? I must be careful what I say. Back to its parents. It's two females and we're just not sure exactly which one's its mother, but it's in all likelihood the one that it tried to nurse from. Okay, well, I hope you all enjoyed that. I certainly did. Surprise! It's certainly not a baby season for a lot of the herbivores in general. But like I say, with such a long gestation period, it's and a quarter for them to give birth in the summer months, which is when we see youngsters running around Djuma and Arathusa. This morning, and apologies for that, but we're going to send you across to Brent, who
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we're at the remnants of this buffalo carcass that the Nkuhumas killed, and the hyenas were definitely here last night, and they've made short work, and there's obviously been a big bit of pandemonium. They've dragged it quite far from where we last saw it, and you can see the pure strength of the hyena has crushed through that whole nose. When we left, the lions left the whole front of the nasal cavity intact, and the hyenas have come in and they've crushed open and they've eaten the sinuses and whatnot in here. And I'm going to bring this a bit closer so you can have a look shortly. They've also managed to get as much of the skin as possible. We're going to go check where the skin was a little bit later, but I'm going to try bring this a little closer. It's quite smelly now, but I've been talking about the flies and how they're going to get involved. And I'm just going to have a quick look here. I saw some eggs. So, if you have a look, there's some white, sort of, it doesn't really look like fly eggs, but it's actually a huge cluster of fly eggs here. Have a look from the side. Try to get some light on there for you. And you can see the flies are here. So there will be certain fly species whose maggots will be able to get in under this last little remaining bit of skin and take it apart. And you can see the hyenas have actually done quite a quick job on this, and they've dismantled that whole rib cage. Absolutely incredible. And we're going to come back to the front now. And you can actually see some of the teeth marks from the hyena as they've crushed it. They've managed to get in, and you can see some into the actual sinuses of the buffalo now. And by by no means is this carcass finished yet. There's still a lot of animals that will take advantage of this. As Steph said last night on Fireside Chat, you will find little rodents and rats will come feed off the tiny bits of meat that they can. But what's amazing is how far the hyenas have dragged this, and you can see the rib cage is split all over the place here. And I'm actually going to bring a rib, a couple of different pieces to show you. And you can see how little is inside these, and the hyenas have crushed them completely to get at any little bit of nutrient that's inside. So the middle pieces of the ribs, there's sort of less inside, so they've chewed sort of to the middle and then left. Incredible how these animals take something like this apart, and you can actually see the red there. And it's porous. It's sort of still hard, even though it is softer than the outside. Absolutely incredible what an animal like a hyena can do. Now we're going to go have a look where the rest of the buffalo was. So where the skin and the legs were. I think possibly some of that might have been taken away by the hyenas, but we'll see if we can find the tracks of them doing that. The buffalo is the gift that keeps giving. So while we go check around to see what else we can find, we're going to cross across to Scott, who's got a huge dazzle of dazzles.
Welcome back, and I think this is the most zebra I've seen in one place since I've been at Djuma, and I haven't counted them yet, but I'm going to start counting now. About 20, possibly just over 20. That was just a quick head count. So great to see so many zebra around, and they do love these open areas where they can feed on the short grass that they most prefer. And that's why we don't see too many zebra in the Sabi Sands. It's simply not the ideal habitat for them. And what a great view that is, all their striped bottoms heading off into the distance. We've only just arrived here, and you may have seen that one who's standing on the far right now. He completely flattened his ears, showing some signs of excitement. And I'm surprised we haven't seen a little bit more action between all of these zebra. The males will vie for dominance over their harem of ladies. It's going to be worth us hanging around just a little bit, just to see if there's any interaction. They can get quite heated, the zebra, chasing off other stallions. At the moment, all is peaceful and calm. Let's watch closely, because they are beginning to move around a bit, and as some of the stallions move around towards others, we could expect to possibly see some bucking and bronking. It's another windy day here in the Sabi Sands. Because there are so many of them, it wouldn't make too much sense to race up to them, because there are so many that we need to try and get into frame. What I'm going to do is try and get us a few close-ups though. There are such pretty animals and it's such nice morning light that you can just slip onto the airstrip quickly and drive alongside them. Try and get you a few more closer views before we send you back to Brent. It's interesting, they've been moving up and down and backwards and forwards and they can't appear to work out what exactly they want to do. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this sighting of the zebra, but we are going to send you back to Brent's.
Welcome back, everyone. Amazing you got to see such a wonderfully large dazzle of zebra with Scott. Unfortunately, I'm with stomach contents, not quite the same as a dazzle of zebra, but here we have some of the buffalo stomach contents that would have been taken out of the stomach by the lions. And if you look carefully in it, you can see there's quite a little holes in that, and there's various different beetles that have now dug into it and are starting to eat it and decompose it. There's also, you're not going to be able to see unfortunately, but hundreds and hundreds of really tiny ants that are also running around, scurrying, picking up little pieces of meat and whatnot. And if we come wide on this whole area, you can actually see a lot of sort of bare ground, and this is where the lions have been feeding on it. And they've dragged the carcass everywhere, they've removed ground, and now this nutrients has been added back in. But in 3 days, there's one skull, a few rib bones, some stomach content, and a bit of bare ground. Isn't that incredible how this has been completely obliterated in such a short time? And if you look carefully on the ground, We'll see signs that the vultures were here. Very sort of downy feathers, and this would have come loose while they were fighting with each other probably and squabbling. So absolutely incredible. And you watch how it just, oh no, it didn't quite work. There we go. Off it goes in this really cold windy morning. But we will come back to check probably in a couple of weeks, and it'll be amazing. We'll barely be able to see that absolute carnage of that buffalo hunt happened here, and everything will sort of slowly go back to normal. And once the rains come, the grass will start growing again. You won't have all these bare patches of soil. Been quite a lot of nutrients added into the soil from that buffalo. That stomach content is great fertilizer. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this, how it develops over the next few months. And it's definitely a story we can keep coming back to. And it's fascinating to see that how little goes to waste in nature. But enough with the buffalo, and let's move on. The one thing I had to be quite careful about while moving around this area was landmines. There were lots of lion landmines, some particularly large ones, and even if they are a day or two old, they're incredibly smelly, and I definitely don't want to get that on my shoe. So we're going to continue on and see what else we can find. I was hoping to find some nice birds this morning, but this cold wind is keeping them a little bit scarce. But maybe as we move down towards the drainage line, we might get lucky. How about Mr. Buff? Or what's left of him at least. So as we disappear from that buffalo carcass, Gilly in Milwaukee is wondering if the skull is still inside, the brain is still inside the skull, and it is most definitely, Gilly. And just before we disappear, there's another landmine on the road, and that is quite fresh and quite runny, and that will be from the hyenas last night. You can see it is from last night, and the one closest to us is already starting to turn white with the amount of calcium that's in their feces from chewing on all those bones. We definitely don't want to drive over that one either. So we'll go around the hyena dung. All carnivore dung is quite smelly and not something you want to get on your car tires or on your boots. So obviously you've seen me play with the carcass quite a bit today and on last night's sunset safari. And Matt from New Jersey is wondering, aren't I worried about anthrax? I'm not worried about anthrax. I know how that buffalo died. I saw him get caught by the lions. So it's it's quite safe. I know exactly. Anthrax, if I found a buffalo carcass that was intact, and nothing had fed on it, then I might worry. Although anthrax isn't very common in this area, further north in the Kruger there are outbreaks of anthrax. Generally anthrax seems to be in much drier areas, and we are in quite a moist area for the Lowveld. So if you headed up towards sort of the northeastern part of the Kruger, there have been outbreaks of anthrax there recently, or not recently, in the last few years. But in northern Botswana, along the Chobe waterfront, anthrax outbreaks are actually quite common. And especially elephants and buffalo are the two affected. And those spores can stay dormant for up to 50 years. So unless you know exactly how that carcass was killed, it is a wise idea not to pick up too many bones. So Marge is a little bit worried that I've been fiddling in the carcass because we know the buffalo in this area have TB, and she's wondering whether I touched the saliva or might not have contracted TB. Marge, as far as we know, bovine TB doesn't really jump to people. Not to say it couldn't, but I think it's a chance I'm willing to take, and to show you guys a good time. No, I'm only joking. There's very little chance of that form of tuberculosis hopping over to us, so it's quite safe for me to touch it. And now, as we wrap up talking about a permanently retired buffalo, I think Scott's got a few more to show you.
Well, this is a more typical scene of the buffalo that we see around here in the Sabi Sands, and they are certainly showing a lot more signs of life than the one that has just been with you and Brent. It's a very large herd, a breeding herd of buffalo. There's possibly a couple of hundred of them in this thick vegetation. But due to the very thick bush, it's difficult for us to get an idea of how many there are. So let's go for a drive through, see if we can work out how big the herd is. We've just come across them, so not sure how many there are or how long this herd stretches out. And I'm guessing there's going to be quite a few of them. The majority of them appear to be heading across to the right-hand side of this road. Let's see if we can get you a few better views in and amongst the herd. What I may actually do is loop around. There is a road that runs parallel to us that will get us in front of the herd. But this will give you a good idea of how many there are. Just driving alongside them. Well, you'll notice that all of these buffalo have got horns, both male and female will have. But the males have got a far larger crown of horn on the center of the head, whereas the females will have a hairy middle parting. And Matinzi in Norway would like to know, what is the horn actually made up of? And does anything feed on the horn? And the brown casing that you can see that surrounds all of the horned animals of Africa will be made up of keratin, but within that keratin sheath will be a white bony inner. There is a very specialized moth called the horn borer moth that will lay its eggs on the horns of the buffalo, and the larva will feed on this keratin sheathing, one of the few animals that can actually digest keratin. But other than that, nothing really will feed on the horns. Of this herd was caught, and just none of us have managed to find it. But lions will follow these large herds of buffalo because there's such a wide variety of potential prey, from the young calves to the old weakening mothers and even the old weakening bulls. Usually though, most of the older bulls would retire from these large herds, and it's just the young and fit virile bulls that will follow them, moving huge distances in order to keep up with the females and also vying for dominance. Sorry, last station, go again. Well, we've just got an interesting question through from Liv in Brooklyn, and she would like to know what the strange hairy thing hanging off the buffalo's stomachs is. There's sadly none of them that have a good example of this strange hairy thing, but it is in fact the male's penis. The individual that we can see here lacks the hair, but certainly does have that little protrusion from the center of the belly. And it is indeed the buffalo's penis. We can't see much of it there, but it will be extended out when mating, when erect. And sometimes they jiggle them from side to side, often when urinating, and that may have been what you saw earlier. Well, let's keep driving through them. It's an awesome experience to be able to drive in and amongst these herds. It's a little bit windy, so they're a bit cautious of us. It'll be nice to just take a slow drive through the center of this massive herd. Really enjoying it as much as I would like them to. Sometimes they can be very relaxed with us, but for some reason now they aren't. Sometimes they can smell the scent of lion if you've been in a lion sighting, but we haven't been in one of those for a while. So I'm guessing it just could be attributed to the wind that is making them a little bit uneasy today. It's really great that we are viewing more large herds of buffalo at the moment, because until recently we hadn't seen many sightings of them, but it appears that they must have exhausted resources in other parts of the reserve and now are spending more time on Arathusa and Djuma, where they didn't spend too much time during the summer months. So it works out very well for us. And the great thing about having large herds of buffalo around is that, like I said earlier, lions will often trail them. They could well have had some lion chasing them and bothering them last night. That's why they may be a little bit skittish this morning. And it's a big contributing factor as to why they will move such large distances. The pathfinders, the females in the herd who are old and wise, will determine where the herd goes. And they've got two things they need to worry about, or three things. Water, feeding all these hungry mouths, and then obviously keeping away from predators. And the fact that there are so many of them, that means they do have to move big distances in order to find enough food for all of themselves. But they are, like I say, persecuted by lion, and this often also pushes them to move quite far.
It takes them about 8 years to get their adult coloring. So while they are like this, they're often confused for brown snake eagles. But you see the blue on its face, sort of a greeny blue color around the face. That'll turn into that wonderful bright red as it gets older. And you can see those massive talons, and if you look carefully at them, the legs as well, and you notice there are no feathers on the legs, and that's one of the diagnostics of the snake eagles. And a bateleur, even though it is quite often a scavenger and feeds off carcasses, it is a type of snake eagle, and it has the same body shape, same leg structure, and they got those incredibly thick scales on their legs. We're going to try edge a tiny bit closer. I'm worried he might fly. Say when, Jandre?
When?
There we go. We just didn't want him to fly when we first saw him, so we've just popped under that little branch that was in the way. Oh, got a fright. It looked like a starling landed in the tree next to him. See how he's constantly scanning and searching. The reason he's probably not up on the thermals just yet this morning is it is quite cold and windy, so that hot air hasn't started rising. Bateleur operate at a slightly lower level to vultures, and they've got incredibly keen eyesight, and they're often the first to spot a kill. And quite often, if a bateleur stops at a waterhole for a drink, and a vulture sees the bateleur going down, you get 2 or 3 vultures who come flying in. They're like, oh, what? Oh, there's no kill. What happened? And the vultures will actually watch bateleurs from above and see where they go down to see if they can try take advantage of that bateleur finding the kills first. Also, in certain parts of Africa, I've seen them, along with yellow-billed kites and hooded vultures, follow wild dog packs. And they've sort of learnt in those areas that the wild dog is such a successful hunter that they leave quite a lot of the meat. They don't have those powerful jaws of some of the other animals. And what that does is they've learned to sort of follow them to try take advantage of when the wild dogs leave those carcasses and before the hyenas arrive. And we're going to try and move forward a little bit. It seems like he is quite relaxed. Oh, there he goes. So that bateleur has disappeared, and unfortunately he's flown off to an area we can't see him. Well, while still on the topic of birds, I'm going to take one last question before we're going to hand you back to Scotty and that monster herd of buffalo. So it's about whether any birds in the Sabi Sands use tools or have any interesting tactics with hunting and that. And the most interesting one is a tiny little heron called a green-backed heron. We see them sometimes at the Arathusa waterhole. I haven't seen them too much on Djuma, but as the wet season comes and a lot of the pans fill up, we will definitely start seeing a few more of them. And this little bird actually is a fisherman and will actually catch an insect like a grasshopper and place it in the water, and especially with a little current, and pop it down and let it drift to try and get the fish to come up to feed on it. And if they don't, they'll pick it up and do it again and do it again. So they actually use bait, and it's quite a pretty little bird. Number 6 at the bottom there, called a green-backed heron. So out of all the birds that occur in the Sabi Sands, that is probably the closest it comes to tool using. And I will definitely try to show you one. We have seen them at the Arathusa waterhole before. So guys, from Jean-Ray and myself here on the Jigger, it's been quite a quiet morning out on Djuma, but I know you've had a fantastic time with Scott with that incredibly large dazzle, and now a huge herd of buffalo. And I'm going to leave you with one last collective noun, the sort of old Victorian collective noun for buffalo as we say goodbye, but I'll wait a little bit. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for your questions. It was great to go have a look at that buffalo carcass again and see how much was left. But hopefully you'll join us for the sunset safari, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more luck when it comes to finding animals. So I'm going to hand you back over to Scott for the last couple of minutes of drive with that indomitability of buffalo. Cheers, and we'll see you on the sunset safari.
And isn't the collective noun of buffalo a wonderful one that Brent has just shared with you? I think it certainly does describe them very well, because they can be a force to be reckoned with. Even if lion do manage to successfully take down one of the members of this herd, there is a strong chance that the rest of the herd will regroup after the initial shock and then come back and chase whatever it is that's causing trouble with them, most often lion. And that's what makes that collective noun such a great one. And it's not uncommon to see several members of the herd with these abnormally shaped horns. You can see how the right hand horn is very long and straight and actually quite thick, whereas the left hand horn is more normal. So you do get these interesting differences amongst the horns of the buffalo. Various reasons, one being because predators are often chasing them, but also because they've got a lot of mouths to feed, and the bachelor herds of buffalo won't move nearly as far. I've just spotted something interesting. We've got a buffalo with a necklace, and that's not something we see every day. And wouldn't it be wonderful to know where she was collared? It was probably not within the Sabi Sands, and more likely the Greater Kruger National Park, and they'll be doing research on exactly how far the buffalo move using that collar. It's a pity we can't tap into that information, because like I said, it would be wonderful to know how big of a distances they move, where they've come from, and because we are part of such a huge ecosystem, they could have come from hundreds of kilometers away to get here. They don't have any strict territories or home ranges and simply move wherever the food takes them. So we have to turn around because most of the herd have moved past us, and there's only just a minute left, so we'll get you a few more views of them just before the close. But I must say a very big thank you again for you guys, the viewers, for following, sending questions and getting involved on our safaris with us. It's always great to have you with us, and obviously it would not be possible if you weren't following us. So thank you for that, and also thanks to VM on camera, to Tara for directing the show, and to Nikki for lending her a hand. Enjoy the last views of this buffalo, and we'll see you all this afternoon.